Welcome to my sewing room. Today I have such an exciting show for you. I will a little bit later on welcome as my very special guest Joyce Drexler. Joyce is co-managing partner of Sulky of America and author of the book Secrets to Successful Stabilizing. Now I've asked Joyce to share with you some of the secrets for machine cut work and the kind that you do not need an embroidery machine. Machine cut work you can do with any sewing machine. Let me share with you some of the beautiful things that Joyce has brought. This is the sweetest little tissue box cover. What an elegant way to cover your tissue boxes. And this is the beautiful rayon embroidery and the cut work. You know, one of my favorite things to do with any kind of sewing machine work is to do beautiful table linens. This is a magnificently embellished napkin, so elegant on the bottom. And you know something that's really nice to have, and especially around the holiday season, it's really nice to have a pretty elegant purse. Isn't this one beautiful with cut work? You know, I told you I really do like linens. This is such a fun way to have linens in a happy bedroom. You see the beautiful cut work and machine embroidery in the middle for a bedroom for a child. Isn't that an interesting concept for a happy, brightly colored? Now let's look at some more things once again for the holidays. This magnificent Christmas stocking done with the beautiful shiny thread, laces, and the pretty cut work, all kinds of delicate machine work on it. Elegant blouses, and you know heirloom sewing doesn't have to be white. Heirloom sewing can be many different colors, including the wonderful color of black. Would you look at this pretty, it's very simple cut work design done just on the middle of this good looking black linen blouse? Also, let's really have some fun. Let's get some sweatshirts. You know, a lot of us love to wear sweatshirts, and I'm certainly one of those people that enjoys that. We have cut work here, and this is the bias binding that has been just turned around and shaped into a really wonderful butterfly. One of my favorite jackets to do, and this is so simple and so wearable, is to take a sweatshirt and then just do some embellishment on the sweatshirt. As you can see here, we have the sweatshirt, and then the lace and the entretot have been stitched around the sides, and there is wonderful cut work up in the top of this sweatshirt. Simple purchase product. We've just had the fun of embellishing. Another very, very, very elegant dress is this purple dress, very, very tailored with a simple cut work right in the middle, purple on purple. That's very, very elegant, that tone on tone. As a matter of fact, this looks like it came out of one of those real expensive department stores. Another very expensive looking and magnificently tailored blouse is this simple blouse with the blue on blue, very delicate cut work right in the middle. So elegant. And you know what I especially like about this blouse that Joyce did? She put pockets down at the bottom. I like to wear over blouses, and this is one of my very favorites here with the pockets on the bottom. Oh my goodness, my very favorite color, red, and red linen has to be, those have to be two of my favorite things. Isn't this a wonderful blouse with the cut work butterfly, excuse me, it's a bow, I'm sorry, with a cut work bow on the front, all ready to wear for special occasions. Now, if you'll come on over to the technique boards with me, Joyce and I will start sharing with you how easy it is to do cut work on any sewing machine. Today I'm going to share with you just how easy it is to do cut work by machine if you just have straight and zigzag on your machine. First of all, I'm going to take 2 layers of solvay, one on the front and one on the back, and I'm going to use just a little spray adhesive and just kind of stick it all together with a little bit of spray adhesive. Then I put my fabric and my stabilizer in the hoop, and I go around the design 3 times with a straight stitch, 1, 2, and 3 around each one of those designs. The next step is to go ahead and cut away the whole inside from all of those flower pieces that are later on going to be turned into cut work. Now you notice I cut the whole inside away. I did not leave my stabilizer behind. Now the next step is to come back and do my applique or my zigzag over it. I've got to have stabilizer behind, so let me share with you a trick. I'm going to just cut a piece of my water-soluble stabilizer, take a little bit of the spray-on temporary spray adhesive, just stick it to the back. I didn't have to rehoop anything. And now then I'm ready to do my final zigzagging or applique stitch all the way around, and then do my embellishment on my little pieces that come down. Now then, after all of that is done, it is then time, and since I have just kind of spray stuck it, I can just pull this away and cut it, or in just a minute, Joyce will have another wonderful trick to tell you how to remove this water-soluble stabilizer from your machine Cutwork. I am so happy to have as my guest today Joyce Drexler from Sulky of America. And Joyce is going to share with you some really wonderful tricks for machine cut work. Joyce, welcome to the show.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm so excited about what we're going to do. We have a lot of cute tricks to point out, and it's really fun to make decorative holes, isn't it?
Decorative holes, that's where it's at.
It really is.
Okay.
Well, you know, one thing I wanted to mention, Martha, was when you begin and you're going to trace your pattern onto the water-soluble stabilizer, I find that if I take the temporary spray adhesive and lightly spray the pattern, then I can push this down over it and it will adhere while I trace it. And I'm going to just get it going straight to begin with, and I just smooth it out. And I do this for a lot of things
so
that I
trace.
To
trace.
It won't
Joyce.
shift, it won't go anywhere.
Heirloom embroidery as well as for machine cut work. Oh, heavens,
yes.
That's a wonderful
Anytime
idea.
you're tracing a pattern, even for applique, it's really a good idea. Now, if I was using a medium to dark shade of thread, I would use a permanent ink marker. But you might find that if you're using a real light colored thread, you'll want to use either the wash away marker or the air soluble marker, because we don't want it showing through the white thread. Thank you. And what I like too, Martha, is the fact that taking it and just taking it off the roll and cutting pieces as you need keeps it from having the folded squares that you find in the packages. So you can just use a roll for that purpose too. Now, I do want to point out that there are a lot of fascinating things you can put behind your cutwork to make it look even greater. And on this particular piece, before you go and do your satin stitching, what I've done is just laid a little piece of nylon organdy in the color that I would like to use. And that will then fill the holes and give it some other type of body, and also give it a look that's really nice and sheer.
Gives it a little more stability too.
More stability, yeah, for longer lasting lingerie. Another thing that I like to point out is you can make your own lace to put behind out of thread. And what we have done here is started off with the twisted thread as our thread of choice to begin with. And I have made a grid, as you can see, by running the machine in two directions. I have made a grid. And by making this grid, just like you said in the beginning, making the stay stitching with the straight stitching for your cutwork is so important, because it has to have a foundation. And then once you have the grid, you can start filling it in with a circular type of motion or side to side, and add other colors of thread to it. That's what makes it really fascinating. And when I got over to the last piece here, what I did was I added a really shiny metallic thread, and that gave it that glitter that you see.
Looks like you have sterling silver in there.
Yes, it's really kind of fascinating. Now, I did want to point out how you set up the machine for doing free motion. You'll want to lower the feed dogs or drop them, and there's usually a mechanism on the side, or some people have a cover plate to cover their feed dogs. You'll want to lower the feed dogs, then you want to remove the presser foot. Now, usually you'll have a presser foot, you know, that might look like this or have little teeth in it. When we do free motion, it's really good to use a darning foot that will go up and down as the needle goes up and down. And of course I use a brand new needle because I don't want any snags happening. I am selecting a straight stitch at this point, and that's what I did this work with. Was I have it all secured in a machine embroidery hoop. This is a hoop that will go under the needle easily. And because I have removed the foot, I can see real well where I'm going. But you are going to determine what direction you move the hoop. You are now the feed dogs. You have to move it to get it to work. So all we do is select the straight stitch, and I like to also have my needle down. Now what I'm going to show you right here, besides going around a shape to get the cutwork area, you can also decorate the inside by making your own lace, going from one side to the other and creating your own lace right in there. But what's important, Martha, is you want to make sure you go beyond that little stay stitching that you have there, because you have to anchor those little threads to get them to stay.
That looks like Ayrshire from Scotland, Joyce.
Yes, it does, doesn't it? Now, I'm just going to remove that for now and just point out to you that at that point, I would like to put the satin stitch over top. And you have to have the stabilizer underneath to support it, just like you were talking about. And we always tried to leave that stabilizer in there. We used to cut away just the top layers. But now we can cut all the way through those when we first begin. And like you said, spray the back and put more stabilizer behind it, because the spray will keep it nice and tight and acts almost like the stay stitching would have. So it's important to do those steps. I do want to point out something else that's really fascinating about this thread that I used. This is called a twist thread. And what makes that up, Martha, is the fact that you can see it almost looks like a tweed in a way, the thread that we use. That's made up of two types of the rayon thread mixed together to make a third color. But it's a more peppered looking color. And I just wanted to show you some lovely things that were done.
You know, Joyce, I have to say that when I saw these pieces, that the one you just put over there, I thought it really looked like thread painting. The colors are so deep and so rich, or maybe it looks like crewel embroidery.
It looked to me, because it's thick.
How did you do that?
It looks like crewel embroidery. Well, the way this was done was a third layer of thread was added. Actually, you have two threads, you know, that make up
that are in the
twist.
twisted, yeah.
So the twist is a heavier thread then.
Okay.
But besides that, we then took one of the colors that were in the twist and added that through the same needle.
Through the same needle, okay.
So through the top needle, we're using a bigger needle size so that it will accommodate all those stitches. Now, of course, this design was done on a computerized embroidery machine, and it told us when to change colors, but we elected to use those double threads to make it even thicker.
It is really fabulous and truly looks like a piece of art. Joyce, thank you so much for sharing
you're
those
welcome.
techniques. And now I have some lovely lingerie for you. I have a beautiful ladies' robe to share with you that Joyce has embellished. Can you see this wonderful cut work with the little organza behind and this matching beautiful forest green? And here is another beautiful cut work piece. And what I especially love is this beautiful machine scallop along the edge of the front of this robe and over here on the sleeve. Isn't that magnificent? Now, there are a few tricks that Joyce would like to share with you on exactly how it was that she made this robe. So Joyce, I'm just going to turn it over to you.
All right. I wanted to remind everyone how to remove the water-soluble stabilizer. And we all know that we can pick it up and we can pull the little pieces away from the satin stitching, because the satin stitching has a lot of body to it and won't pull out the stitches by pulling the stabilizer off. But sometimes we're working with really delicate stitches, and I've found that using a wet Q-tip allows you to wet the edge right around where the stitching is, and it will just come away so simply.
That is fascinating.
Without adding extra water to the garment and taking time for it to dry. So if you want to have a speedy way of removing the stabilizer, try the Q-tip method.
And without tearing anything and without
Right.
putting the whole garment into water. That's a fabulous
Exactly
technique,
right.
Joyce.
And I also wanted to point out about the beautiful lingerie piece that we had. When you're developing the scalloped edge, you'll find that having the darker black stabilizer, this is very soft and very sheer, but it's a permanent stabilizer that will act behind the scallops through washings and keep the thread looking really nice. So what we do is we simply cut away those edges with a very fine, sharp scissors, and what you can do is either go over them again by having the water-soluble solvay behind it, or if you only like it just the way it looks, then that's fine too. But I like to go over mine a second time. And using that twisted thread really gives a nice tone-on-tone look to garments. Here, of course, we have stabilized behind the setup for a computerized embroidery, and we have actually placed the water-soluble behind. Again, I took the temporary spray adhesive, and I sprayed it so that it would stay in place really nicely and lay really flat. This really seems to be a good way to take care of your cut work, because in a two-step computerized work, you have a chance, it'll go around with a straight stitch or a small zigzag, and it gives you a chance then to cut away the areas that you would like to have cut away from the fabric so that they'll be open. And at that time, if you want to, you can slip that organdy or that nice lingerie fabric behind that's very sheer, and it gives you a chance to have that see-through effect that's, you know, sort of sexy.
Without having to unhoop it too.
That's right,
that's
without
critical
having
that you
to
don't
unhoop
do
it.
that.
Right, because you want to have that nice and tight all the time.
All right, and thank you so much, Joyce, for being here.
It's been a
and
pleasure.
Next, I have a craft for you. I'm so happy to have as my guest today my daughter, Joanna Pullen Hammett, who has a very, very pretty craft for you. Joanna, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. Today, we are going to make a small feather evening bag that looks like this when you're through with it. But let me tell you what you need to know before you start. There's only two types of openings that you can do this bag with. The first is a zipper, like this one. And the second one is a removable lid. You can purchase these type of evening bags at any local discount store or maybe even your fabric store. Next, you take your marabou, and you can purchase this at your fabric store or local discount store. And first, you take it, you put it in the center, and you start wrapping it around, coiling it around, just like this. Next, on the sides, you're just going to glue it back and forth, and same on the back. You just coil it around on the back.
Just put a little glue on there.
Therefore, you
and
just
you're ready
put
to
your
go.
little glue on there and you're ready to go. Therefore, your end product looks like this.
That
a
seems
lovely
simple.
evening bag.
Simple enough to do.
Oh, it is. It's a lot of fun, too.
Thank you, Joanna.
Thank you.
And now I have some hand embroidery for you. I am so happy to have as my guest today my dear friend and business colleague, Kathy Neal. Kathy has been one of the main designers for several years for So Beautiful magazine, and she has taught at the Martha Pullen School of Art Fashion for a number of years also. Kathy, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Martha. It's always great to be here. Today I'd like to share with you the Fil Tiré stitch. This stitch creates a mesh type open work on the fabric. It comes from the French words fil and tiré, fil meaning fiber or thread, tiré meaning to pull or to pull out. And sometimes this stitch actually does require the pulling out of fibers from the fabric in order to make the mesh design in the way that a particular design calls for. I have two antique examples that I would like to share with you. First, we have this Ayrshire work. This collar, this is how they were done by the flowers in Scotland. And notice here that the Fil Tiré is used around these flowers. See that nice open work around there and in the center of these little flowers? And also on this larger linen piece, this is an English piece, from about the turn of the century. Notice that there are two types, in fact there are three types of drawn work on this. Now, not drawn thread, but drawn or pulled work. This is the regular Fil Tiré, sometimes called punch work. And that is where the needle and the thread make the open mesh type look. If you'll notice in this example right here though, the holes are a little larger, and that is because they did exactly what I mentioned before. They actually removed some of the fibers from the fabric itself before they did their bundling stitches that I'm about to show you. Two entirely different looks there,
And
Martha.
both beautiful.
Both absolutely beautiful. First, I would like to show you the basic stitch, and I will tell you as I'm putting on my glasses here that when working this stitch, you might want to add just a little more power of magnification. The first stitch, I've actually labeled my points. These are magnified so big on here, but the actual stitch is just an A to B stitch, where the needle comes up at A and goes in at B and comes back out at A, just like that. And once this is done, when I start doing it over here, you'll notice that the thread is pulled very tightly to open up holes. The next stitch goes from B to C. And these are squares. If you're working on linen, it's good to kind of count the fabric threads, and then you do that stitch again. B to C, and then D to E, just like that, and so forth all the way down until you finish one whole row of stitching in your design line. Now, let's talk a little bit about the design line. Once again, I take a template that can be bought at an architect supply store or an art supply store. And the reason I like these is because when I lay them down to trace around them, they have little marks at the quarter points of these designs, and I always mark those. You can see where I've done that. And the reason you want to do that is because you want to start your fil tiré at the widest point of your design line. And at this point, I'll work it about the size that you would be working it on this linen, which is about 4 fabric threads. Notice how I pull that stitch, and then I go down about 4 fabric threads, and then I take another C to D, and notice how I'm pulling, and that's the basic stitch. Now I'm going to put this down, and you'll notice how where I've pulled these threads, it has little holes that have been created here in my work. When I finish covering the entire design with those stitches, then what I want to do is you turn your hoop 90 degrees and go over the whole entire surface one more time using the same holes that were created with the first pass. And that's the fil tiré stitch, Martha.
Well, Kathy, that is a fascinating stitch and one of my very favorites. Did you use those on the doll dress?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
So,
you'll notice on the front of the doll dress that this is Swiss batiste, and I did use I love ovals, Martha. They
I
have
do
such a
too.
nice, they add so much, and you can work around them so well. The Swiss batiste is worked with fil tiré right in the center of the oval, as is the pocket of the wonderful nightshirt pattern that you designed. And I will mention to our viewers that you always have to plan some sort of little decorative stitch, but because the fil tiré is a square type stitch, and especially on round designs, you have to hide those little margins.
well, what did you put around both of those, Kathy?
I put the chain stitch around both of those.
Around both. Is that a good stitch to choose?
That is a very good, feather stitch is also good, and I might add that just for television purposes, we used much larger threads. When I actually do this on Swiss batiste and on linen, Martha, I use a very fine sewing thread to do
Like
this
a sewing
work.
machine thread.
Sewing machine
Off a
thread.
spool.
Right. This is an 80 weight cotton thread, and it works very well because it bundles the fibers of the fabric very well.
Oh, Kathy, thank you so much. And next, I would like you to come along to my attic with me. I'm so glad you could join me in my attic today, and I also have as my special guest my newest grandbaby, Cecil Elizabeth Hammett. Cecil is wearing one of the dresses from my collection that I purchased in England a number of years ago. It has a scoop neck and the little strings that tie it up around the neck, so really it can fit a baby that weighs under 8 pounds the way Cecil does now, or it can go to fit a larger baby too. I love the way the tucks and the panels in the center go diagonally. I think that's really beautiful. Thank you so much for joining me in my sewing room today, and I would like to issue a special invitation to you to come back next time.